Hello, all you patrons. Here we are again. Yet another pre-show. Gather round.
And it is summer. It is definitely summer here in Austria. Roll out those hazy, lazy, crazy days of summer. Those days of popcorn and pretzels and beer. It is time. So get yourselves together, go down to the Neusiedler or the Jones Beach or Cape May or the Pacific Palisades or whatever's left of the Malibu, Pismo, whatever, um, Jersey Shore, wherever it is you go, Clacton on Sea, Deauville, Villepreux-sur-Mer, wherever your summer place is, go to your summer place. Bar Harbor, Sedona, uh, Lake Tahoe, wherever you prefer to summer. Nantucket, uh, Martha's Vineyard. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, especially those of you in the elite pre-show crowd, you know what I'm saying. You know where you got to go. It's time to summer.
Where do you go, Charles?
I don't go no place.
No, no, no. I mean, like, let's say you're free as a bird. How about like over here in Southern California? Do you go?
Well,
Yeah.
if I will tell you, my favorite summer place in California is not in Southern California. It is in Carmel, the Monterey Peninsula. That that is where, if I had time and money, that is where I would summer. If I were forced to live in California, that's where I would be.
Not a shock. I feel like a good percentage of Californians would say the same thing. Anyone who's pretty much been to Carmel would probably say Carmel.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I mean, I remember when your brother lived in Love Cove in Pacific Grove.
yeah, Pacific Grove, Love Cove. Yeah, that was a nice. That's right. That's right. That little area. Yep.
It was quite nice. One of the things I've always loved about driving to Carmel from LA is you go up the coast, and firstly for me, getting out of LA always felt like liberation, like somebody had opened a cage and I was out.
Okay.
So you hit Malibu, right? And that's the beginning. There you are driving along the beach. You keep going, and before you know it, you're in Ventura. And I like Ventura. I really do. Depending on how you drive from there, you go up through the pass there to well, you go to Santa Barbara first. And Santa Barbara is another town I love. I mean, the great thing about the road to Carmel from LA is that it's just one pleasant place after another. It's like boom, boom, boom. So then you get up to Santa Barbara. You drive up through the pass through the Cachuma by Lake Cachuma, and you come to one of my all-time favorite places, the Cold Springs Tavern, which
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
to me, it's like the Inn at Bree.
I
Uh,
mean, that's right. Well, I mean, situationally, it is the Init Brie because, I was reading the history. Obviously, you know this, but just explain to the audience. To get to Santa Barbara's kind of locked in by mountains on the inland side. So to get to Santa Barbara, really, you have to go across the mountains.
yeah,
And so Cold Springs Tavern, it is so historical because it's the place like when you have horse and wagon and you're going up this. It's insanely arduous. So you stop at Cold Springs Tavern, and that's functionally the same as the Inn of Ed Bree, right? It's like
yeah.
this stopping spot.
It was the stopping spot of the stagecoach went through there. It's a great place. And then you pull yourself together and you arrive in the place that your brother always described as Solvay.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I'm checking all those boxes. I just, my wife and I just went to Solvang last year. December time, Christmas time. That was a treat.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's really really great. And then now mind you, from Solvay, now you're inland, but don't you fret because you're going to come eventually to San Luis Obispo after you go through Santa Maria. You come to San Luis Obispo, the fabulous Madonna Inn. And there you can go to Pismo Beach, you can go to Morro Bay. If you really want to go inland, you could go to Paso Robles. There's wine country and all that. There's tons of tasting. Everywhere I've said, north of Santa Barbara, there are tasting rooms all over the place. And then Morro Bay, you're back on the coast, and you hit Cambria, and then and Cambria is one of these really cute little coastal towns.
yeah.
It's uber cute. Now, mind you, it's warm. It's we're on the water. It's not frighteningly hot. It's warm. You keep going north though. You come to San Simeon and Hearst Castle, and if you're like me, you get off and you take one of the tours, and then you get back on the road and you come to Big Sur. You're at Ragged Point, and you keep going. You come to Gorda, and then Lucia, and then Big Sur town. And there you probably stop off at Nepenthe. You go to the Phoenix Bookshop and eat at the restaurant there. And then you keep going. And as you turn a corner and fog descends. And you're in Carmel. And up on the hill is the tower of the beautiful Carmelite monastery, the Carmel of Carmel, where they make caramel. If you want, you can buy some of the caramel of the Carmel of Carmel. And then there's the mission, and you can venerate the shrine of Saint Junipero Serra, and then you're in Carmel town, and you're sharing the Carmel Peninsula, the Monterey Peninsula rather, with Pacific Grove PG. You can drive the 17-mile drive through the cypress woods, the butterfly sanctuary, the monarch butterflies hanging out, having a good time for themselves. You can go to Pebble Beach Lodge and have some of their incredible cream of artichoke soup. You can go to Monterey and see the Royal Presidio Chapel, and the Customs House, and all the restaurants and Fisherman's Wharf. Oh man, I love that particular odyssey we have just described, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
But each and every one of you have a similar summer odyssey wherever you are. So, whatever annoyances are going on in the world of politics and religion right now, it's summertime. So, whether it's a day, a weekend, a week, a month, the whole summer, whatever you can do, whatever you can afford, get away to your summer place. If you're in Rome, go off to the Auburn Hills, and enjoy that beautiful area. If you're here in Vienna, the Neusiedlersee on the one hand, or the Alps on the other. I mean, just go where you can go. If you're like me, well, then turn on all your fans. Although, actually, I am coming back. I'm not quite sure when I'm coming back, but it'll be in July sometime. Although early, mid, or late has yet to be determined. And then I'll be stateside to August. I plan to spend a week in Alberta, Canada in August. And then August 21st, I've got a wedding in beautiful Glendale. I'll still be home probably in early September, but I've got to be back here by the 21st for another wedding, 21st September. So my summer plans are still all somewhat up in the air, but I'm looking forward to to seeing California again, and wherever I go in the States, if anywhere. And so, let me know, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in having me speak or sign books or whatever. If you are, contact the Gebetsliga. That's blessedemperorcharles.org, I think, and tell Suzanne Pearson you'd like to see me. She sort of acts as the central clearinghouse.
All right.
Remember, it's not a done deal, but I tell you, I do love doing book tours because you see places. I mean, sometimes you go back where you've been before, but so often you see places you've just never been.
All right. All right. Let's do some questions, shall we?
Okay, I can do that.
Excellent. All right. We have a bunch of questions from Connor. And he says, I had a debate with a devout Catholic friend over the ideal government not too long ago. I, of course, argued for monarchy, citing Thomas Aquinas, who this friend is a big fan of. He then said, and I'm paraphrasing, quote, well, I think that if Thomas Aquinas said that, it's because he didn't get to live in this time. If he were around today, I think he would think the American form of government was the best. End quote. I almost fell over from shock. Charles, Vincent, please address this statement, both in the specific and any tangential way you feel necessary or relevant.
Well, I think that if Thomas Aquinas had known about Star Trek, he would have loved the United Federation of Planets.
Oh man, I mean, what he said. When someone says something like that, I just kind of go directly and say that's what you've said is not substantial.
There's nothing there.
There's nothing there. What you've said is not an argument.
No, it's an expression of feeling. You know what? I think Thomas Aquinas would have loved the United Nations.
I mean,
there's no argument there. What am I even saying? I'm saying I like the UN. I like Thomas Aquinas, so obviously he would have because I like them both. So there's no basically. I'm putting myself into the picture. I'm reading myself into the novel. Don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is. It's so typical too, because when you're arguing with something like this, you're never arguing. It's never over the content. Like it's like, no. You're arguing. Oh, I like Thomas Aquinas, and so that can't be true because I have this version of him, and this author wrote this about and saying Thomas Aquinas would have liked that, and I like that author too. So that author can't be wrong either. Where that
my
author,
Thomas Aquinas would never have thought that way. Well, okay.
That's perfect, Charles. My Thomas Aquinas would never have thought that way.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Okay. My Joe Biden was never senile.
Ooh.
My Obama was the second coming, and my Donald Trump is too.
Wow, you're pretty open-minded.
Yeah, well, I accept everybody because they're all mine. The trick is if you distort reality to fit your own feelings, everything's great.
Well, this is something Father Ripperger has talked about. It's a huge thing that I think it's so important to bring awareness about this because you don't know it's happening. And so I'm trying to sort of extract this from myself, which is he's saying that the world is training everyone to be emotional and to react emotionally.
Yeah.
Because then you're out of control. Then you're easily manipulated.
Yeah. and and you know, in a weird way, you easily manipulate yourself.
Right.
And what do I mean by that? Well, if you don't examine your own thoughts and feelings about things, you're just motivated by them. You don't know why. You know, why is it whenever somebody has a second cup of coffee, I get annoyed? Well, there are two ways I can look at that. I can ask myself, wait a minute, why shouldn't they? What is my problem? Well, it's because Dickie Delacroix, when I was in third grade, I hated his guts and he always had a second cup of coffee. I could do that. I could examine and see what my problem is. Or I could simply say, oh, these people who take that second cup of coffee, I hate them. And obviously, because I'm the center of everything, my feeling is more important. And I don't even know why I think that way. Why I feel that. I can't say think. I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know why I'm motivated because I don't stop to look at myself and say, wait a minute. It's okay for other people to have second cups of coffee if they feel like it. It's not a problem. So you see, we even manipulate ourselves unknowingly. We give ourselves up to our own impulses, our own feelings.
Yeah, 100%. I highly recommend doing that. I really, I've been really emotionally struggling this past year, and I've tried to incorporate. I read, I highly recommend the book Introduction to the Science of Mental Health by Father Ripperger. Really good.
Uh,
He's got his doctorate in that, but these priests are starting to take approach of, and they're starting to connect the dots between mental health and the faith and spirituality, and how much of the truth do you abide by?
well, see, this is a new application of a very old idea
Yes, yes,
because what is sanity? Sanity is the conformity of the will to reality, to the truth.
hmm.
That is what sanity is. Now, to the degree that you won't do that, to that degree you're insane.
No, not me, Charles. No, everybody else. Like,
No,
I'm
everybody
no.
else, yeah, everybody else but me, yeah. That's like when my mother came to watch me graduate from ROTC boot camp, you know, and I could hear her. She pointed out down at me, and she goes, "Oh, look, there's my son. He's the one in step."
What? The one in step?
Yeah, well, we're marching,
You're
and
marching.
then
Okay.
and my mother pointed down at me and said, "Oh, look, there's my son. He's the one in step."
As in, like,
Meaning,
you.
of course, that I was out of step.
All
Everyone
right.
else is out of step though because her precious darling was in step. See,
Nice. Nice.
that didn't really happen, but it's an old joke. In reality, my mother would have said, "What's wrong with you, kid? Get in step."
But, in analyzing my own emotions, and sort of like when something happens and it triggers a very strong negative emotion, and just sort of stepping outside of yourself and saying, why did this happen? For me, I think the two biggest reasons, the majority, there's two reasons. One, it's just straight up ego.
Yep.
Straight up ego, straight up concept of self, and what I deserve and what I'm entitled to, and this and that. Um, and the second one, actually, it's I guess there's different ways to say it, but one way to say it is pride of life,
Yes.
where it's the opposite of poor in spirit, I guess you could say, where your material goods and your possessions and your worldly success is kind of your heaven, right? It's kind of what you're trading off of. It's your real treasure compared to the spiritual life, And that's kind of that kind of unmasks, you kind of unmask yourself when you realize where your real treasure. You're still super worldly,
Yeah, true.
So, Anyhow, okay, so that's where we are with your friend Connor. He needs to do some soul searching. Um, but Connor has more questions for us. He's not done with us.
Ah,
He says, I recently saw Les Mis with some friends at the theater. I read the book in high school, saw the movie. Actually, was my high school's big production, but this was the first time seeing it on stage. So I have several questions associated with this. Number one, have either of you seen, read, or watched Les Mis? What are your thoughts on it?
well, I read the novel way back in high school.
Hmm.
Uh, Victor Hugo was an interesting man. He started out at the beginning of the Restoration, so we're talking 1815, 16, 17. He started out as a very devout, pious young royalist. He even wrote an ode to the coronation of King Charles X, uh, which was 200 years ago, almost exactly, this month, the month we're about to leave. But he lost his faith and he became a liberal, uh, and uh, he began to see in the myth of progress. So the church was superstition, science was everything, and Les Miserables was written as a way of encouraging people to break through the evils of the old regime of myth of this of that, uh, which a lot of Victor Hugo's work ended up being. Uh, it's kind of ironic that at the very end, he's asking you to choose between the revolutionaries of 1830, who are now the government of Louis Philippe, and the revolutionaries of 1848, who want to take things even further. And in his mind, as with many liberals, this ongoing revolution of freedom was, you know, it would eventually bring us to utopia. It would get rid of poverty, it would get rid of ignorance, it would get rid of all the bad stuff that we don't like in life. Well,
Did it do it?
everything, no,
Oh,
everything Victor Hugo campaigned for eventually occurred. But the results weren't anything like what he would have wanted. You know, the old saying, careful what you pray for. So, I mean, the basic problem with liberalism, and you see this in Victor Hugo, is that it believes that man is perfectible through his own efforts. It does not believe in the fall of man. Man's misery, man's problems are all because of his structures, his society, and if only allowed to be free, man would become wonderful. Well, no, because the biggest truth of our existence is the fall. We're inclined to evil. We have darkened intellects. We have weakened wills. We are not, when allowed perfect freedom, we become very unpleasant. And the problem with so many of our rulers is that they have too much freedom. The problem with liberal rulership in general is that they're too free. They're not bound by tradition or anything else. I, I remember I just did an interview for the Marian Franciscans, and I was reminded of Lord Irvine, who was the last Lord Chancellor under Tony Blair, the last full Lord Chancellor. There's still a person with that title in office, but it's been very changed by the worthless scum they called Tony Blair. At any rate, his last Lord Chancellor was called Lord Irvine. Now, you know that appearing in Parliament, appearing in court, the cabinet meetings, he had to wear different sorts of robes of office. And he complained that they were uncomfortable and weren't funny. Oh, I don't like him. I don't like him. Well, you see, that, my little munchkin, is the price of power. if you are going to wield authority, then it's a good thing if it makes you feel uncomfortable and takes away a bit of your happiness. Those in power need restriction, and nothing restricts them more than ceremonial and funny clothing. And when they hate that, it shows that they're not willing to submit their ego to the office. They're fallen creatures. I mean, ultimately, and I don't say this as if this was intended or planned by the originators of these offices, whether it be a university president or the mayor of a city. But the ritual, ceremonial, and costuming that go around people in authority were, I think, divinely intended to act as restraints. I mean, we saw this with the late Holy Father, who hated any kind of restraint on his will, which the papacy is filled with, like every other office. And that is why liberals in power become so oppressive. They want the same freedom for themselves personally, which means breaking down the office, that they claim to demand for everyone else. The problem is that when they are in power, they lord it over everyone else. You see, the way anybody would do in their spot who had their ideas. Because if it's all about me and I refuse to believe I'm a fallen creature, then I must remake the world according to me. I got to. Otherwise, I'm not being true to myself. I'm not being authentic. I'm not being who I am. The liberal says, yes, that makes sense. His opponent says, we don't want you for who you are. We want someone to occupy the office and to go along with what it requires out of it. Really, and this is where people like Victor Hugo were really messed up. It's not that man has been corrupted by his institutions. It's that his nature is such, high or low, strong or weak, wealthy or poor, powerful or not, he will try to corrupt those institutions to fit himself. Now, of course, some institutions are inherently evil, but the vast majority of institutions of all kinds that simply do the work of life, of mankind living his life, most of them have very benevolent origins, but they're easily given to abuse because human beings tend to abuse them. And the problem with Victor Hugo is he couldn't see that. The problem with the liberal, a man like Victor Hugo, is that he says, well, we'll just sweep away everything that came before us and then things will be wonderful. And never, in what are arguably the two most liberal centuries on the planet, when those ideas have been so predominant, never have so many people died in pursuit of them. You know, I used to hear people say things to me like, oh, all of these wars fought in the name of God and religion. Far more people have died in the name of freedom. Millions. Millions have died in the name of freedom. But we don't say that. We don't point that out. And what has been the result of it? And what is freedom anyway? A woman's freedom to choose is really the freedom for her to murder her child. Okay? But don't expect a society that has no problem with infanticide to be either moral or compassionate. You're expecting too much out of it. You know, if I'm a drunkard and I just booze it up constantly, don't expect me to be at the office on time. You're asking more out of me than I can give. You can do one of two things. You can either fire me, or you just accept the fact that I'll come into the office whenever I come in, and I'll do as much work as I am capable or feel like doing, and then I'll, stagger off back to cases and hang out for a while.
Hmm. Well, I don't want to derail this, so I'm gonna kind of explore. You mentioned so much here. I kind of want to explore some of these things you talked about. So you talked about liberals believing that man, like you just need to get out of the way of man in order
Yeah,
to reach the full potential.
yeah,
And so that's interesting because, and sure, yeah, a lot of liberals do believe that. But you know what who that brought to mind was actually Jean-Paul Sartre, who I kind of came across through Solange Hertz.
yeah.
So Sartre was a philosopher, very big on free will. He was a novelist, and his religious beliefs were he was an atheist. But what I think Solange Hertz described is he wrote a play on a sort of people and the nature of people. I don't remember the name, but
No exit.
probably. And the way she described it is basically he is saying that hell is other people. Do
Yeah.
you think that's fair? That was kind of a little bit of the point is in the state of nature, hell is other people.
Well, there's an old joke that a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. Um, and I think that Sartre, well, you might even call him a post-liberal. He'd gone in and come out the other side.
Mm.
Um, and his finding his views were too far the other side. Man is not perfectible by his own efforts, but he is capable of great things.
Mm.
He is capable of wonderful things. A friend of mine made the rather funny comment about that. He said, "Hell is other people if they're like Jean-Paul Sartre," which may also be true. I don't know. I would not want to spend eternity with Jean-Paul Sartre, which is another good reason not to go to hell.
All right. Okay, so you're saying okay, so post liberal. So that's sort of why. So that's not, I guess, classic liberalism in action there.
No,
Yeah.
no, and again, a lot of thoughtful liberals end up that way
Mm.
because everything that you spend a lifetime of pushing this idea, and things don't get better, and man is, he's freed of one horror, and then he jumps into another. You know, you might have thought you disliked Kaiser Wilhelm, and then you see the rise of Hitler.
Mm. Right.
So, and he's brought in by a majority of the people, these people you wanted to free from aristocratic tyranny. Well, you succeeded. You freed them. And guess what? They chose something worse.
Mm. Right.
So, I mean, it's tough if you're a thoughtful and basically kind person.
Right. Basically kind. All right. Connor says, tell us about Victor Hugo and your thoughts on him. Is there anything additionally you wanted to say about Victor Hugo, Charles? No.
No,
Uh.
just that on the one hand, he was a sad being. On the other hand, he died, I think, in 1878, and his funeral is often pointed to as the beginning date, and the outbreak of the war of 1914 is the end date of the era called on the continent the Belle Epoque.
Okay.
It
Why do why
includes what we,
why do they choose his specific death?
I think, because he was a living link with the historic eras that had gone before.
Hmm.
In other words, he was a product of the immediate post-Napoleonic era. He'd lived through the Restoration, the July Monarchy, uh, the Second Republic, the Second Empire, and into the Third Republic. So with his death, you had a living bridge to that era gone, and then you had a new period in the Belle Epoque in France and on the continent generally. In England, would correspond to the High Victorian and the Edwardian era.
You know, you just triggered a different thought, because in terms of we're talking about liberal mindset, trying to free man,
Yeah,
and looking in the future. Well, when you say Belle Epoque, what I immediately think for me is Midnight in Paris,
yeah,
Woody Allen, and then his discussion on nostalgia and looking back and saying, "Oh, if we were just like the people from the previous period when art was really good." So that's like a
yes,
different spin.
it's a different spin. And when you bear in mind that the people of the Belle Epoque, this kind of liberalism was a big part of the Belle Epoque.
Mm.
People believed that things were going to get better and better all the way until 1914. A lot of people. This was the slow ebbing of the faith in a lot of minds of the elites, and more the idea that we're moving forward, we're getting better and better. And the irony of that is that Midnight in Paris, the character, the girl he meets in the 20s, she's looking nostalgically at the Belle Epoque, when the Belle Epoque was all about looking forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, I mean, that's part of the amusing contradictions of life. And from the Belle Epoque, we get the Art Nouveau that was so lovely. But notice from the Art Nouveau came Art Deco. And there's a real connection between the 1890s and the 1920s. And
Mm.
what's funny too, especially if you're a younger person, you tend to see these eras as being long-lived. They weren't. Fast forward 100 years ago. This is now, I mean, fast forward to today. This is now 1925. I first met your brother in the year of our Lord, 1885.
I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing. So, yeah, we think that's light years between 1885 and 1925, but then that's just what you did.
That's what I did. That's what your brother did. It's just actually what you did.
Yeah.
I mean, you were little at the beginning of it, but
That's strange to think of it that way. I feel
I
like
know.
not a lot has happened in our time, but in their time, worlds completely transformed.
But you see, the world has transformed. The
Well,
world of today, the world of today is completely different from the world of your childhood.
th- that's true.
The
I guess
what we
visually, is part of
the
the
show we're
difference.
doing
Yeah.
right now, kid, we couldn't have done this when you were a boy. The technology didn't exist.
Mm.
We're all of us constantly in touch with people across the planet. It wasn't like this when you were young. You could smoke and mouths sit and yap at you. You could go to a bar, order a drink, pull out your pipe, and smoke away like a grown up, as though you were over 21. Now we're forever frozen by our masters as children who mustn't be allowed to do those sorts of things. Because you're bad. Bad.
Yeah, I guess we would have had to we would have had to have a phone conversation and then record the phone conversation and then put it on a cassette tape and then sell the cassette tapes.
Yeah, pretty much. And who would have bought it?
Uh,
And that's not all. No government on the planet in 1985 would have been capable of tucking its subjects away as we did during COVID.
that's very true.
Could you imagine them pulling a shenanigan like that in 1989? I can't.
I guess so. I guess that's
But
true.
all the world's peoples were put by their masters in their little toy boxes and put back to bed for several months. And we got to do as you were told. Good little boys, good little munchkins. So you see, you have lived through changes, an enormous set of them, and you're not even aware of it because that's not people aren't. People are not aware of what happens around them. And that's why when you're elderly like myself, you have to make a real effort to realize that the world that the young people live in today is nothing like the world I lived in. And it takes effort because you're busy living your life. You don't notice things changing around you. Now, in retrospect, you look back at the period from the Belle Epoque to the 20s, you think, my God, look at all the changes. But, from 1985 to 2025, the Soviet Union fell, the fall of the wall. And let me tell you something, I'm very much aware of that here. My dear friends, the Tereks, that family with the 8 wonderful children who I'm so fond of could not exist in those days. Why? Because Father Uri is a Slovak and would have been tucked safely behind the Iron Curtain. And Katie is an American from Colorado. They could never have met in the world of my childhood.
Hmm.
We have gone through changes that have been enormous, but the human race does not generally pick up on this. I make the comment over and over about two big differences between older people and younger people. As an older person, I can read most young people I encounter like a book. I really can. It's not because I'm brilliant, it's because I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot of things. And it's usually, sometimes I can't, but usually I can figure out a kid pretty quickly. What I can't know is the world he lives in. I can't know that. And even, if I went to school and worked with him, I still wouldn't know because my very presence there would change the chemistry. I can't know the world he lives in. But turn it around. A kid, a person much younger than myself, can't know me. Not really. Because it's just too much. In later years, when he gets to be the age I am now, he might pick up on a lot of stuff he missed then. But in the immediate, I'm an unknown creature, really, because I have a long past behind me that he can't fathom. But what he can do is if he studies it and has an historical sense, he might very well be able to make a lot more sense out of the world I lived in than I could because I lived in it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you see, your experience right now, looking at all this is called middle age.
Oh.
Because when you're middle aged, the world of your childhood doesn't seem very far back. And you often miss how completely everything's changed. Contrary-wise, the future, um, you still have a lot of it left. And that alters your view of what's coming forward, of what's going forward. You and I can't see the future the same way because I have so little of it left in comparison, God willing. I don't mean God willing that I snuff it. I mean God willing that you have a long time ahead of you.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it is. I mean, what you say is very true. I don't think the impact of AI. I don't think people are really grasping or understanding that. As someone who's
No.
kind of in the industry, it's going to change our lives in an unfathomable way. I mean,
It
prompting.
has.
Yeah. No, go on.
It has. But we will go through it. We will sleepwalk through it.
Right. That's kind of what I mean. You
Yeah.
know, it's like because we're
It's
going through it, it's like, oh, okay, we're sleepwalking. But if we saw it from outside of ourselves, then it's like, whoa,
exactly.
this is insane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I could well imagine. In fact, I sometimes hear things like that. Kids, by that I mean late teens, early 20s, saying, "Boy, I wish I could have lived in the 1980s." And I'm like, well, firstly, the 1980s were not a fixed place. You know, they were movement. And secondly, from what I remember, they weren't that great. But I can remember when I was a boy, and my father and mother were very much alive. We had a phenomenon in the 70s, the 50s revival, and that was Happy Days and things like that came on the air, and there was a brief period where people were doing, 1950s stuff. Well, of course, to me, then the 50s were 100 years ago, seemingly. They were a long, long time ago, and I was quite interested in the whole thing. But my dad just kind of shrugged, said, 50s revival. What are they? How about a 17 minutes ago revival? What what are they doing with that? Because for him, the 50s were very recent. They were like not the 80s, but the zeros right now. Could you imagine what you would think of a zeros revival?
It's pretty weird.
Man,
Yeah.
2007 was so cool.
Yeah, somehow that was 18 years ago. That doesn't make sense, but like it just happened. Like,
To you.
yeah.
But if you were a kid, again, a teenager, and that was why you have things like the 50s revival then, why you had that 70s show.
Yeah, I mean that was what like that's like around the Dark Knight came out. Like yeah, Heath Ledger. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one. I remember that year quite well. That just happened, man. I mean, people are thinking of, and also Lord of the Rings, right? Lord of the Rings 2001, 2, and 3, and now it's like, oh, this is a classic. And now, what did they just do? They had like for Harry Potter, they're like recasting it or whatever. They've got John Lithgow as Dumbledore. We just did this. I thought we just we just did this.
Welcome to the march of time. Where did that come from? That was a newsreel series, I think. The March of Time. Let me see. I remember that the March of Time. Yeah, it's a film series. From 1935 to 51. Yeah. Wow. The March of Time. The opening was really something to that. Anyway, yeah. So well, now you come face to face with your past. I hope you're happy.
So there's one. We're way off. We didn't get through all the questions, but it's because we went in such a good and interesting direction. So I have one last sort of impromptu question from a discussion. So you talked about COVID, the lockdown happening when in 1989, there's no chance that could have happened.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you feel society is becoming increasingly more pliable in that sense, or did we learn something and now it's going to be more difficult, or is it fragmented attitudes in terms of response to lockdown, or what do you think?
I'd say it's probably fragmented attitudes. I mean, some people it really annoyed. Other people were just. I mean, I've even heard of people who'll tell you that even though now they realize they were taken for a ride, they would do the same thing again because they did it out of love. Okay. Uh, but I think on the whole, we are much more pliable because remember that people know less than they used to. I mean, and by less, I mean less in terms of real things. They don't know literature. They don't know history. They don't know civics. The vocabulary is shrinking. It the ability for people to concentrate and hold their attention span is dropping. I find it in myself, frankly. I've got to force myself to read books and things like that used to be force it, like force yourself to eat.
Mm.
But there's so many demands on the time. There's so much information being thrown at you. The internet is this all-encompassing thing. I mean, one of the other great occurrences of these past 40 years was the merger of television with the internet.
Right.
Uh, honestly, I don't have a TV. I watch old stuff online. I have no idea what the top series are today. I have no idea. I don't know what people are watching. I checked out, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. I mean, coming to Austria was a big part of it, obviously, but even before that, I mean, I liked NCIS. I don't even know if NCIS Los Angeles is still going.
I remember you liked a show. I haven't even. There's not a lot of buzz around it, but it sounded interesting. The Man in the High Castle.
Oh yeah, I loved that. But see, that was an online show. That wasn't on television.
Ah.
See, this is what I mean. There are a lot of I liked. I didn't see all of the seasons, but what I saw, I liked of Stranger Things.
Oh, right.
I mean, they're
I'm surprised you like Stranger Things. I saw season 1 and I kind of didn't like it because
uh,
and I kind of didn't like it for reasons that you've mentioned. Where's the good that battles the evil?
oh, there's no moral sense to it at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
The no, I understand that, but for me, it's a bit like Lovecraft. It's the atmosphere.
Oh, I
There's
see.
it's again, it's vestigial in terms of its frames of reference.
I see.
Mutatis Mutandis, Stranger Things plays to a traditional supernatural thing, a bit like Game of Thrones plays to traditional fantasy. There's no moral sense in Game of Thrones.
I see. I see.
I mean, there are people who are more or less sympathetic, but 3/4 of the time, the sympathetic ones get killed.
I see.
And the bad guys, if they don't triumph, they really, really suffer the consequences. Sometimes they do, but not often. And even when they do, it's not in a way that I think the only one that really was off that I kind of appreciated the way they did it was with the character they called Littlefinger. The
Yeah.
thing they set it up in such a way that it looked like Arya Stark was going to get executed, and then she and her sister completely turned the tables.
Yeah.
That was one of the few I thought really morally satisfying moments in that whole series.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you think, you think Arya's going to get it for what? Once again, as is usual, the world of Westeros, injustice will triumph, and instead, they very very nicely and very neatly turn the tables on both the viewer and the evil Littlefinger himself.
Yeah.
So that part I liked.
Yeah.
But by and large, though, I mean, I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people who simply don't watch TV or only slightly, And I was a product of the television age. We only had 3 networks that most of us watched. And very often, if there was a particularly exciting show on one night, the next day at school, all the kids would be talking about it. We all saw the same shows and all of the same music. That's all gone. You can hear and see and basically spend your time in whatever you feel like doing.
Okay, yeah.
And that
Yeah.
and that does make you pliable because you are dependent upon what is offered you. And God forbid there's a blackout. Now, see, my father, and more particularly my grandfather, lived through the rise of radio, the fall of radio, the rise of television, the fall of television, and the emergence of radio programming after World War One was revolutionary in this country. Because it used to be that people would gather on their neighborhood steps and gossip in the evenings, or people would gather around a piano, and somebody who knew how to play, they'd have sheet music, and everybody would sing. It was a very different culture. And then the radio came, and people would gather to listen to the radio. But see, even that forced you to use your imagination on the one hand, and on the other hand, because it was not as hot a medium as television would be, it didn't actually require all of your attention. So you could actually be doing something else while you were listening. And it engaged your imagination because, of course, when you listen to a radio drama or a radio comedy, you got to imagine it all in your head. The movies, of course, are becoming big at this time, but you don't sit around and watch a movie at home. Going to the theater is an experience in and of itself.
Yeah, I feel like so much of the modern spiritual battle, it's just sort of not being a slave to sort of your pleasure centers that come from that dopamine release.
Yeah.
And also battling the path of least resistance, right? Where you just choose the easy route on literally everything, and you never enter the state of discomfort. You never challenge
Yeah.
yourself because you don't need to challenge yourself,
Which is why during COVID, the vast majority of us had no problem going along.
Yeah.
I mean, why my joke, it wasn't much of a joke, was that my government was telling me that the best thing I could do was sit around and do nothing. I'm on with that, let me tell you. Wow, it's little did I know I was doing my patriotic duty. People used to think I was just a lazy layabout. Nope. I'm doing it for you guys. I'm doing it for everyone. I'm doing it for us. So you see, I could feel sanctimonious about being a lazy slob, and I am both sanctimonious and a lazy slob. So I know what I'm talking about.
Perfect. All right, we are just about at the hour mark for a pre-show, but what a pre-show! I'll tell you that. So we're out of time. We have to move on. We have to do the full episode yet somehow.
Well, see, the time. This is what I'm telling you. Time is moving, or in the immortal words of somebody or other, time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future.
Well
Of course,
said.
on the other hand, in the year 2525, if man is still alive, if woman can survive, they will find.
I don't like that song because the lyrics are incomplete. They will find what?
Incomplete.
What are they finding? Yeah, if they're still alive, they will find.
Okay, all right. Since you're challenging me.
I'm not challenging you. I'm challenging the composer of that song. I'm challenging them to finish the song.
All right, hold on. You put it in that term. All right. Here it is. In the year 2525, if man is still alive, If woman can survive, they may find. Well, you're right. It does drop there. In the year 3535, ain't gonna need to tell the truth, tell no lie. Everything you think, do, and say is in the pill you took today. In the year 4545, you ain't gonna need your teeth, won't need your eyes. You won't find a thing to chew. Nobody's gonna look at you. In the year 5555, your arms hanging limp at your sides. Your legs got nothing to do. Some machine's doing that for you. In the year 6565, you won't need no husband, won't need no wife. You'll pick your son, pick your daughter too, from the bottom of a long glass tube. In the year 7510, if God's a coming, he ought to make it by then. Maybe he'll look around himself and say, guess it's time for the judgment day. In the year 8510, God is going to shake his mighty head. He'll either say, I'm pleased where man has been, or tear it down and start again. In the year 9595, I'm kind of wondering if man is going to be alive. He's taken everything this old earth can give, and he ain't put back nothing. Now it's been 10,000 years. Man has cried a billion tears. For what he never knew, now man's reign is through. But through eternal night, the twinkling of starlight, so very far away, maybe it's only yesterday. In the year 2525, if man is still alive, if woman can survive, they may find. And then it repeats.
All right, that's going to do it for the pre-show, everyone. But stay tuned for the full episode coming right at you.